everyone, in today's video I'll be using the Derwent Inktense paint pen set to create this drawing of a blue-tailed bee eater. Now this is the pen set number 1. It comes with 12 different colors and I recently purchased this from my art supply store because I've been wanting to try it out for a long time, so I gave it a try now. When I found it in the store I had to buy it. So you can see it comes with a swatch and it comes in a palette similar to what the watercolors come in. It has a water brush and a sponge as well. Now I am going to swatch these out myself. I prefer to use my round brushes that I use for my painting with Inktense. So I'm just going to be using those. I'm using regular printer paper to swatch the colors out. Although this is not the ideal paper to use for wet media, it just gives me an indication of what the colors look like. And I can keep the swatch in the set so that I know what the colors are going to look like. Now, the reason why I'm using a swatch of the colors, or I'm doing another swatch of the colors, is because it may look a little different to what they have provided. So I have used the Inktense pencils and Inktense blocks before. If you've watched my Animal Habitat art series, you would know that I've used the Inktense pencils for the entire series, and they work perfectly for those illustrations, and I loved working with them. They were so easy to use and to layer and everything, so I really wanted to try these out. So when I found them at my art store, I had to purchase them and try it out, and I was not disappointed. I worked with them on this piece and I worked on additional pieces as well, and I've noticed that they work very similar to applying a painting with your Inktense blocks, and I can work so easily with it being in a pen. So it's much easier to work with these pens or like how you would work with watercolors, but it is more permanent and I enjoyed that fact about it. I'm using very little water when I am swatching because I want to see the vibrancy of the colors and the saturation, how saturated the colors are. So I'm not using too much of water. If I would use too much of water for the swatching, I would get a very diluted color and it won't give me the true color that the pigments have for the set. So you can see it's a standard range of colors, but I was able to mix a lot of colors from the set. So you can see if I compare it to the swatch that they've provided, it's similar to that, but the ones I have painted are a bit more saturated than the ones that they've provided. Now I'm going to be using my watercolor sketchbook for this drawing, and I'm just going to clamp or clip the pages down or the sides of the book just so that it holds the pages down, so the pages don't lift up when I'm going to be drawing. Now I'm starting off with a water-soluble graphite pencil. That's just to get the initial sketch down onto paper, basically lay it out. It's as a guide for when I come in with the paint, and it's just to get the proportions right and just the most key areas or the most important placement of certain things like the beak, the eye, certain feathers, just to give me an indication of where everything is. Now I start off with the eye for most of my animal portraits. Now you will know this is as it says, it's Inktense. It is an ink, but it's a water-soluble ink. So if you do apply it to paper, remember that it's going to be permanent and you're not going to be able to lift that color off from the paper like you would normally be able to do with watercolor. With watercolor, if you lay down a layer of paint and you go through with a wet brush over that, you can lift some of that pigment up from the paper. With these, that's not going to be possible because it is permanent, and it stains. So you're going to have whatever you put down, it's going to remain on the paper. So just bear that in mind when you are using these. And also, I would advise to use a palette separate to your pan set if you want to preserve the look of your set, the palette that comes in the set. The reason why I use a separate palette is because these do stain the palette, so you're going to have stains on it. So if you got a regular palette that you can buy from your art store, a cheaper one, then you can just use that and keep it for your Inktense pen set. I am using that for I've got one old palette that I found, a small one that I'm just using for the Inktense pen set. I'm not going to be using that for anything, so if it's stained, it doesn't bother me too much. But I'm not sure if the palette that comes with the set, if it gets stained or not. I don't want to try it because I want to preserve the cleanness of the palette and not have any stains. With my watercolors, I usually use the pens that they provide or palettes that they provide to painting. But with these, they do stain, so I want to just preserve my whiteness or the cleanness of the palette. So I'm just keeping that clean and using a separate palette. But that's your choice. If you don't mind it getting stained, you can go ahead and use the palette provided. Now, as you see, I'm working section by section. I'm starting off with the head and moving slowly downwards and building up my layers. Now, I start off with the main area where I'm covering the entire feather area. I'm just basically outlining all the feathers, but I'm keeping the colors light. So I would advise to start from light to dark, because if you do go very dark too soon, you're not going to be able to layer lighter colors over. So if you start light, you can slowly build up your darker layers to create your the depth that you want to create or the textures you want to create. Now, if you want your image to be more three-dimensional, which is what I'm aiming for, I want something more realistic, not hyper-realistic, but it must be realistic enough to realize that's a bird and see the feathers and the details. Then I am starting with a light layer, and I'm going to be following my reference filter, looking at the shadows and the highlights. The highlighted areas, I'm going to retain as much of the white of the paper or very light shade of paint over on the lighter areas, and I'm going to retain that as I'm building up the darker layers. And then, if you're looking for something more realistic and three-dimensional, remember to keep your highlights as light as possible and keep your shadows as dark as possible, because the darker the shadows and the lighter the highlights, the more three-dimensional your image will look and the more realistic drawing you'll produce with your layering process. Now, I've worked on another two pieces. I worked with the one piece, it was a very loose painting. The other one was a very illustrative piece, and this one is, of course, my more realistic layering, a lot of layering in it. So what I've noticed with these paints is that they work very well at layering. I can layer multiple layers over, provided that the previous layer is dry. However, these paints do dry quite fast, but I am able to also create washes of color. Now, I've done on the one illustration that I've done, or the drawing that I've done, I've actually painted in water on the paper, and then I put in the paint and blended that for a background. It creates that background similar to watercolors with the wash, but these are more permanent, or actually permanent, so they're not like watercolors where they can lift. So I know that those washes I'm doing, I can do multiple layers to build up my backgrounds, and I don't have to worry about the color lifting off, provided that the previous layers are dry. Now, as you can see, I'm slowly building up the texture of the feathers, and that's another thing with these paints. I'm able to create different textures, use different techniques. It doesn't matter on what style of painting or drawing I'm trying to do. I'm able to create anything I need or want with these paints, and that's something that I really enjoy. And having it in a pan set just makes it so much easier to work with. Not that I won't be using my Inktense pencils or my Inktense blocks anymore. I'll still be using those, but these are very convenient if you want to do a quick maybe a quick study, or you want to do a quick illustration or a quick drawing, or even a detailed drawing, but something not too complicated that's not going to take too much of time, but you just want to sit down and start painting, and you don't want to have to shuffle around looking for things. You just need your water, you need your palette, and you need a paper towel, and you got your pan set, and then you can just start creating. Now, the good thing about having these limited colors, like as I said, this set has only 12 colors. Now, the good thing about that is that I can mix a lot of colors from these. So you will see in this drawing that there is some pink on the back of the bird. There's some pinks and purples. Now, I don't have pink or that lighter purple in the set. I do have a darker purple. But with the pinks, what I did is I diluted the reds really a lot with the water, or with a lot of water to dilute it out, and that created the pink that I needed. The purple, I just diluted the darker purple, and I was able to get that more pastel purple that I needed as well. The good thing about using a limited color palette or limited colors is that you're not going to have a choice but to try to figure out how to mix colors, and it's going to help you improve as an artist, and it's also going to help you improve your color theory and your color mixing. So that helps a lot for your drawings and your paintings. It's going to help you for all of them. So that's something that I would recommend you to challenge yourself to use less colors, and you'll see how you automatically start mixing colors, and you know what colors to mix when you're looking for a specific color by using less colors. So that's something I would recommend, and that's something that I had to do for this. Even for some of the turquoise and blues as well as the greens, I had to mix most of those colors up. I didn't have those colors in the set, and I used just these 12 pans for this entire piece. Another thing to remember with these Inktense pen set is that when you're using it, if you want a very vibrant saturated color that's rich, you need to use less water and more pigment. So reduce the amount of water you're using. That'll give you a very vibrant color. But if you are using a lot of water, you're going to get a very diluted color, and it's going to look very light. So you can get your lighter colors or lighter tones by using a lot of water. So even if you mix a color with two colors, if you need it to be lighter, just add more water and you're able to use that color in a lighter, for lighter areas, as well as also if you want to do washes for like backgrounds or for the underpainting as well. Now you'll see in the area under the eye, I left the white of the paper showing through. But I did come through with an extremely diluted black, with a little black in a lot of water, which gave me this nice medium sort of a gray tone or lighter gray tone, which I was able to use for the shadows underneath the eye, which created that layers of the feathers. So it's very important to pay close attention to your reference photo when you're trying to draw realistically. Look at the proportions, get your initial sketch correctly onto paper, and then layer as many layers as is necessary, which this as well can layer very well as well. I never had to stop layering. I could keep on layering if I wanted to. And also make sure that you pay close attention to where your highlights are, to retain that paper or that lighter areas, and then also look at where your shadows are and really apply a lot of color or darker colors to the shadows, so that you are able to get that three-dimensional look and your drawing will be more realistic. So you can see I'm just coming through now and adding a bit more details to the feathers, adding a bit more shadows. You can see I was able to create different textures of feathers using these paints, and I'm only using two brushes for this entire piece, a small round and a medium-sized round brush. Those are all that I'm using for this entire piece. I'm just refining some of those shadows. So in conclusion, my opinion of these paints or this pen set is that they work very beautifully onto paper. They can be used for different techniques, different styles, and I'm able to achieve everything I need to get onto paper. So definitely, if you want to try it out, I would recommend you trying it out. Just a disclaimer again that I am not sponsored. I have purchased these myself just to try out, and I'm just sharing my opinions and views of these from what I've experienced working with these. So definitely I would recommend them. And yeah, so I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one. Bye.